For me, it is also another glamour coming from that is the arrogance of the intellect. I think that's a world glamour because our worldview is built on the facts of the intellect, and all these facts are illusion, are Maya, actually causing Maya. So again, there's the connection between illusion and Maya and the glamours, which kind of always come together. And yeah, in the last times when I think about it, it always belongs together. So for me, from all these thoughts, expectation as something the intellect sets between the material and spiritual worlds, because expectations are some kind of imagination of the mind, of the lower mind, and not intuition. So it stands between um, us and the intuition. And the word glamour really sprang to me, arrogance of the mind or arrogant of the intellect. Oh, that's all.
So maintaining that openness to the wisdom is essential, the wisdom of the higher mind, that not only discrimination, but spiritual discernment then, as we try to work together to even name a world glamour.
Yes, and for me, it's passive active. It's passive, so not pre-forming imaginations, but waiting for impressions. But it's also active because it holds this field open to receive. That's a kind of activity, but a passive activity. So, yeah, it's a difficult state to be passive active. Or active passive.
Yes, purpose and will. Purpose is passive, will is active. And finding the spiritual will then within, and to be able to let the impressions flow through that spiritual will rather than the personality will. Would anyone else like to share some reflection they've had?
I know I read it, but I've never really heard that term, true spiritual expectation, before. It's interesting. I know it's a mental health thing, not to have expectations lead to disappointments. I guess it's false expectations or instead of true expectations. And I guess you can have that in the spiritual line too, expecting to see the master or to do this or to do that or be an initiate, in 2 weeks or something like that. Maybe that, you could consider that false expectations. I just haven't heard the term before, but it's interesting.
I think the term expectancy, which we used earlier, fits quite well too. So it brings this word expectation into a new level.
Thank you. So let us align and focus with purity of motive inspired by a loving heart. As Master DK says, right spiritual motive involves the merging of the personality self-will into that of the sacrificial will of the soul. Martine.
Our aim is to embody spiritual discernment, practice positive harmlessness, and eventually achieve a state of divine indifference as we dispel illusion, dissipate glamours, revitalize Maya in all our relationships.
From Master DK for those who undertakes wholeheartedly the process of occult meditation. Know thyself. Proceed slowly and with caution. Study effects. Those who are in preparation for initiation, we must learn to work consciously with glamour. We must work effectively with the presented truth, ignoring any pain or suffering or mental questioning which is incident to personality rebellion and limitation. We must cultivate that divine indifference to personal considerations, which is the outstanding hallmark of the trained initiate.
Expectation can be viewed from different standpoints. Expectations in our personal life or in our groups can be negative or positive. They are often about value, outcome, usefulness, worthiness, and come from our imagination, usually using the imagination which comes from past experience and reacts to past experience and is part of the lower self. The lower mind can't imagine outside the box of experience for each individual, all imprinted, and even wishful thinking is based on experience. Many years ago, there were several programs using this mantra, positive expectation. What you conceive and believe, you can achieve. Some practice this approach without a sense of reasonable steps to accomplishing the goal, and without considering the physical, emotional, and mental limitations to guide the process of even setting the goal. Expectations are naturally tainted by emotions, hopes, ideals we hold dear. And therefore these expectations create glamour and are part of the world of illusion. How can we go beyond the expectations of the lower mind?
How do we develop expectations? How can we instead use telepathic rapport to develop receptivity to the soul guidance required to bring into the group mind true and appropriate expectation of our service to dissipate glamour and dispel illusion? Let us recognize our group intention and the purity of that motive. Let us recognize our achieved alignment. Let us recognize the soul, the source of love wisdom. Recognize gratefully the equipment we have been given. And let us recognize the group receptivity and the linking to the higher network of light, the new group of world service.
The act of naming. We agree upon a glamour that impacts aspirants and yet is not a minor glamour. The glamour we'll consider today is the glamour of distorted expectation as a hindrance to group progress and service. Consider the hindrances that this glamour manifests in your life and group work. See your part in it and name your part in it.
remember that the three stages of focusing the light must be somewhat developed before effective use of the formulas can be possible. And those of us intending to work at the task of ridding the world of glamour must subject ourselves constantly to these phases in practicing the art of polarization. We are developing an understanding of the apparatus of thought, of the creation of thought forms, and of the nature of the thinker. We know ourselves and our groups to be emotionally polarized, yet in group work relatively free from astral control. This astral liberation must to a certain extent control the choice of those who are to work at major dissipations. Those of us working in group formation will have achieved a measure of mental focus, but for the purposes of the work to be done, we will focus ourselves consciously and deliberately upon the emotional plane through the control of the three bodies, physical, astral, and mental, and we shall continue to work regularly on the dissipation of our individual glamours.
Practice regularly for a period of up to 10 minutes of silent preparation, considering the glamour and how it affects your life. And then continue. With some assurance, now that we are able to lift our consciousness out of the lower focus on desire and self-will, personality will, let us align as a group in the spiritual will of the group soul.
I am one with my group brothers and sisters, and all that I have is theirs. May the love of the one soul pour forth to all. May the energy of one soul lift and aid all. May the thoughts which the soul creates reach and encourage all. May the energy of the divine self be spread abroad in our hearts, through our groups, and throughout the world.
In the group glamour technique, and also we'll carry this forward in the world glamour technique, we use the creative imagination to face the group members as if eye to eye and establish a soul-to-soul connection. Visually, in your imagination, and yet in the higher mind, vision, the group members standing together as souls, and our ability to see each other and see the soul in each and every one as if we were meeting eye to eye. and in silence we withdraw from personal and world affairs, and we center the work to be done, setting up a magnetic field of positive, receptive activity. We sound the protective formula using the sign of the cross of divinity, that great symbol of light and of consciousness, signifying the vertical light and the horizontal light, the power of attraction and the power of radiation, soul life and service. With this long-armed vertical cross touching the forehead, as a soul, I work in light, touching the center of the chest, and darkness cannot touch me. Touching the left eye, signifying manas, I take my stand within the light, I work. And the right eye, signifying buddhi, and from that point, I never move.
Maintaining a focused, immovable will is the point of tension. The identification of the brain, physical body, mind, and soul with the will aspect, and the preservation of that identification, unchanged and immovable, in all circumstances and difficulties. Remembering that the will aspect is contacted only from the mental plane, and only those, therefore, who are working with and through the mind can begin to appropriate this energy.
We begin the act of focusing the lights. Focusing the dual personality light of matter and of mind. We meditate on soul contact and the recognition of soul light. First, the blending and fusion of the two lesser lights and of soul light as an individual, and then this is carried forward as a group, each member making their contribution and consciously attempting to visualize the process of blending the triple light which each contributes into one sphere of light.
Hearing the note of the soul, visualizing the light of the soul, the light of mind and the light of matter, brain, merged and blended, recognizing, feeling the intent of the soul. From that high point of soul focus and using the triple light, we merge and blend, first, our individual lights, and then see the individual lights merging and blending into the one group center. And we see those joining us from the other side of the veil. And the light of the senior disciples and initiates, serving to dissipate glamour, bringing their light as this triple light group light. The group soul, the realized unity of the souls of all the group members, the great searchlight, grows, expands into one great light.
Then we say in unison, the light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. Sounding the Om as the group soul on its own plane, sounded forth by the group soul, the realized unity of the souls of all the group members. The light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. Sounding the Om as the soul on the mental plane. The light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. Sounding the Om as the soul on the astral plane, the soul ready to function as light bearer and distributor of light upon the astral plane. The processes of individual and group alignment and integration are now regarded as completed. We recognize our fusion and the point of tension from which we will proceed with the formula. This allows us to avoid and not attribute undue power to the form aspect of this simple ritual and aids us in focusing our united attention in the world of meaning and the subjective spiritual reality. We've accomplished the 3 stages: naming, protection, and focusing the light. We are united as souls, insulated against the attractive power of the glamour, and united as souls with mind and brain held steady and positive in the light. This blended light is looked upon as a great searchlight, whose beams are to be directed through an act of the will downward from the mental plane onto the glamour of distorted expectation, this hindrance in all its forms, existing on the astral plane, and which has been brought into relation with the group by the very act of naming it.
As we sound the mantra of light, we visualize the turning of the great searchlight, which we have jointly created by our unified light, onto the glamour to be dissipated. Holding the light steady and realizing mentally the work of dissipation it is intended to do through this act of direction.
Radiance we are and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth, the inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus, with the light, we work and turn the darkness into day.
We pause for a few minutes as we attempt to throw behind the searchlight our united, directed, and dynamic will or intent along the projected beam of light. The destructive quality of the spiritual will is destructive to all that hinders the manifestation of divinity. We have attained a united point of tension. We are dedicated, the individual and the group will, to the will of God. This act of will carried on by each member of the group silently with a deep realization that all of us are thus accepted and that it is the group will which is being silently focused. Then we say together, with power upon its beam, the light is focused on the goal.
in the act of projection. We utter the words of power, naming the glamour of distorted expectation in all its forms as a hindrance to group service, thus bringing it consciously into relation with the focused light. We begin the task of dissipation. The power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of distorted expectation in esoteric groups. The power of our united light negates the quality of the glamour of distorted expectation in esoteric groups from affecting humanity. The power of our united light destroys the lie behind the glamour of distorted expectation in esoteric groups. These words are our act of affirmation and gain strength from the experience of each of us and from our familiarity and regular use.
Then comes the act of penetration, an important aspect of the work in which we visualize the gradual dissipation and dispersal of the glamour by the penetration of the light into its darkness. We endeavor to see the glamour disintegrating and the reality emerging, doing this by an effort of the creative imagination. Each of us does this in our own way and according to our own understanding and capacity.
In reviewing and practicing this technique, please extend the silence at least 5 minutes. Before we move to the closing. As a group, we withdraw our consciousness from the astral plane and the world of glamour. We refocus attention, first of all, on the mental plane. And then on the soul plane, relinquishing all thought of the glamour, knowing that the work has been successfully carried forward. We reorganize ourselves as a group in relation to the kingdom of souls and to each other. Occultly speaking, The searchlight of the soul is shut off. Let us sound the Om together in group formation. Om. And then each of us, in order to emphasize that the group work is done, will sound the Om aloud and say, "So let it be," and help us in our group life to end all glamour and untruth. Each of you do this now. We will not pause the recording today. Oh, so let it be, and help me in my own life to end all glamour and untruth. As we practice this dissipation of the group glamour of distorted expectation, let us share our reflections in a new light, in the light of these particular statements gleaned from the blue books. And I'm going to share one that was written into the comments. The words of Master Dwal Kul, shared by Martine, the crux of the lesson which you are now in the process of learning is to refrain from expectation, from life, expectation from people, and expectation from circumstances, except that expectation which concerns spiritual opportunity and your relation to my ashram. Disciples need to regard the ashram more definitely as a place of spiritual enveloping. Let's read that again. Disciples need to regard the ashram more definitely as a place of spiritual enveloping, he says, if he may use so peculiar a phrase. Thank you, those who will listen to this later and be part of our continuing effort to dissipate group glamour. And next week on Monday, we will have a preliminary discussion trying again to name a particular world glamour, incorporating the suggestions that people have offered in the interim and also as part of their reflective process following today's work. The dialogue questions that we will look forward to reviewing before our next meeting together. Whenever we see ourselves being locked in an expectation that is coming from fears and emotions, what is our response? And as group members, what can we do to support each other? What do you suggest you do that can assist our group as we move forward to begin the dissipation of world glamour? What terms are you using to describe your experience or what you note in another group member? Are you aware of any emotional response? signaling a kind of worry or a withdrawal, fear or irritation, or an idea that conflicts with the spiritual expectation that Master DK has outlined for us. Something that might dampen your full and true envelopment in the expectancy that we will be part of the ashram and can actually call in those from the other side of the veil and those masters and disciples and initiates working to dissipate world glamour. What are the additional glamours activated when distorted expectation rather than appropriate expectancy is apparent? One that was mentioned earlier, intellectual or mental arrogance, kind of sense that one has the answer, one knows how to express it for all. So please keep those questions in mind as we prepare for next week. And we'll close today with the mantra of love.
In the center of all love, we stand. From that center, as the soul, we outward move. From that center, as the ones who serve, we work. May the love of the divine self be shed abroad in our hearts, through our groups, and throughout the world.
We sound a silent Om, affirming the direction that we are taking, the alignment that we have achieved, and stand in spiritual expectancy as we move forward together.